Hi, I'm Nicholas from RTINGS.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the Dell Alienware AW3423DW. We'll be evaluating it on our standardized test bench to see how it performs and if you should buy it. By name, the Dell Alienware AW3423DW is an updated version of the Dell AW3420DW, but it's a completely different monitor. It's only available in a 34-inch size, and it's the first QD-OLED monitor on the market. We'll talk about what that means later in the video. If you want more details, head over to our website to see the full review. This monitor is a 34-inch 1440p ultrawide display with an 1800R curve, which is good if you want the edges of the screen more within your field of vision. The overall design is gamer-oriented with a white and black body. There's zone lighting on the back to complement the lighting in your gaming setup. The stand supports the screen well, and there's minimal wobble. You can adjust the height, swivel, and tilt, meaning it has a good number of ergonomic adjustments for an ultrawide monitor. You can also remove the plastic covers on the stand and back to route your cables to the inputs and keep your setup clean. There's a pretty standard range of inputs with two HDMI 2.0 inputs and a DisplayPort input. It also has 4 USB-A ports to connect your peripherals, and 2 of them are in front for easy access. There are 2 audio outputs, and the one in the front is meant for your headphones. The one in the back is intended for speakers that have their own volume control, as you can't change the volume of that port. Before we get into the specifics of the test results, let's first explain how this new QD-OLED technology works. This monitor uses the same panel and technology as the Samsung S95B TV. It uses a blue OLED panel behind a quantum dot layer, which is supposed to deliver brighter highlights and more colors than traditional OLEDs. For comparison, a regular OLED uses a white OLED panel behind an RGB layer. QD-OLED is an improvement over traditional OLED in terms of brightness because it doesn't rely on the white panel to get bright, and instead, it combines all its pixels to produce a bright white light. In case you're wondering, the quantum dot layer is the same as on a QLED TV. In short, QD-OLED combines 2 proven technologies in OLED and QLED. Now let's take a look at the test results. We'll start with the contrast. A high contrast ratio is important if you use the monitor in the dark for deep, dark blacks. Thanks to its OLED panel, it has a near infinite contrast ratio for perfect black levels in dark rooms. This contrast is measured in a dark room, but it isn't as good in bright rooms because the panel lacks a polarizing layer. This causes the black levels to raise when there's a bright light on it, which means that blacks look closer to gray in bright rooms. This is disappointing as it doesn't deliver the perfect black levels you expect from an OLED in a bright environment, but it's still fantastic for dark rooms. Now, a high peak brightness is important either in a bright room to counteract glare, or if you want brighter highlights and a more impactful image, especially in HDR games. In SDR, the peak brightness is low and it isn't enough to fight a ton of glare, like if you place it opposite a bright window with direct sunlight on it. HDR is where this monitor stands out and is one of the advantages of QD-OLED. It gets really bright as it can reach 1000 nits with a 2% window. This means that small highlights really stand out, especially against a dark background. However, it gets much dimmer with larger areas due to its aggressive automatic brightness limiter. This is especially noticeable and distracting when minimizing and maximizing windows in the desktop, almost like the screen is adjusting the brightness on its own. However, it isn't distracting when playing games, so if you're a gamer, just disable the HDR while you're in the desktop. This issue is with the HDR Peak 1000 picture mode, and if it bothers you, you can also use the HDR 400 True Black mode, which doesn't have an aggressive ABL, but highlights aren't as bright. Reflection handling is also important for a bright room. It minimizes direct reflections very well, and there isn't much distracting glare. However, the screen distorts reflections from strong light sources, which can be visible during regular PC use. Another issue is how ambient light causes the black levels to raise because the monitor lacks a polarizing layer. It looks best in dark rooms because of this raised black level issue, but if you want to use it in a bright room, it also looks good, just not as good as a typical OLED. This monitor uses a unique triangular RGB subpixel layout, which is different from most monitors that have RGB subpixels in a straight line. Because of this, the text clarity is just decent and isn't as good as other monitors. Letters can look blurry, and enabling Windows ClearType doesn't do much to improve it. Keep in mind that this is more of an issue when working on documents and browsing the web, and not so much with games. Another issue with this subpixel layout is that there's color fringing, especially when you have windows open. You can see a thin green line at the top of every window and a red line at the bottom. This can be distracting if you notice it, but it also might not bother you, especially if you play games with a full screen window. Good viewing angles are important to ensure details at the far sides of the screen don't look washed out. This monitor has very wide viewing angles, and the image remains consistent when viewing from the sides. This means it's a great choice for co-op gaming. An overall uniform screen brightness and color is important when playing video games to avoid distracting areas that are overly dark or bright. Overall, it has excellent gray uniformity. When you're looking at full screen web pages, the colors are extremely uniform, even better than most monitors, so it looks incredible. In dark scenes, the Dell also has perfect black uniformity thanks to its OLED panel. There isn't any blooming around bright objects, which makes it an incredible choice for playing games with dark scenes. A lot of people care that a monitor has good colors in SDR, and accuracy in the standard sRGB color space is important. This monitor has a specific mode that limits the colors to the sRGB space, so they don't look oversaturated, and the accuracy is incredible without any calibration. It doesn't lock you out of most settings either, like on other monitors, so you can adjust the brightness to your liking. If you want to take full advantage of this monitor and display vivid colors in HDR games, then it's exceptional for this. One of the goals of QD-OLED is to display a wide range of colors in HDR, and this monitor does exactly that. It has near perfect coverage of the commonly used DCI P3 color space, and it has good Rec 2020 coverage that makes it future-proof. This incredible color gamut translates into an exceptional color volume as it displays bright and dark colors extremely well. It displays brighter colors compared to traditional OLEDs, so you get a fantastic HDR experience with colors that look vivid. Before we move on to some of the gaming features, let's talk about one more part about OLEDs. Traditional OLEDs have a risk of permanent burn-in when exposed to the same static elements over time, but it's possible QD-OLEDs like this one have a smaller risk. We're working on a new OLED burn-in test with TVs, so we don't know exactly how much better this panel is. Burn-in can be problematic with constant exposure to the UI elements from your PC software, but it's less of a problem when playing games. This monitor has a few settings for panel maintenance, like the pixel refresh that runs a 7-minute refresh cycle after 4 hours of usage. There's also a longer panel refresh that takes about an hour to do and runs after 1500 hours of usage. These refresh cycles can be annoying if you want to play your games, but it helps extend your monitor's life in the long run. Also, Dell offers a 3-year warranty against burn-in. Now, onto the gaming performance. A high refresh rate is important for gaming. It allows the image to be drawn on the screen faster, which makes it more responsive. If the monitor supports variable refresh rate technologies, then you can get a nearly tear-free gaming experience. This monitor has a 175Hz refresh rate, which you can achieve over a DisplayPort connection with an 8-bit signal. However, due to bandwidth limitations, it has a lower refresh rate with a 10-bit color depth, or if you use HDMI. It's a native G-Sync monitor, which is great if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, and FreeSync also works over its entire refresh rate range. When playing video games, a fast response time is important for the clearest image without distracting blur. Another advantage OLEDs have is the near instant response time. This means that motion looks exceptional and there's hardly any motion blur with fast moving objects. It performs like this on any refresh rate, which is great if the frame rate of your game drops. Unlike some other OLED displays, it doesn't have a BFI feature to reduce persistence blur. Also, a low input lag is really important for a responsive feel when playing video games, and this monitor has great low input lag. It isn't as good as some other gaming monitors, but it's still low enough that you won't notice any delay. While most people will use this monitor with a PC, let's quickly talk about the compatibility with other devices. Because it's an ultrawide screen with HDMI 2.0 bandwidth, it isn't ideal for the PS5 and Xbox Series X. You can't play 4K games, and those consoles don't support ultrawide gaming anyways, so you'll see black bars at the sides. If you want to use a Mac OS device with it, the monitor works well, but there are the same text clarity issues you would experience with a Windows PC. As we mentioned before, HDR doesn't look the best in the desktop because larger areas are dimmer, but like with a Windows PC, HDR looks amazing in games. So this brings us to the main question: should you buy this monitor? It really depends on your usage, but if you're a PC gamer, there are a lot of good reasons to buy this monitor, and it's one of the best gaming monitors available. Picture quality is remarkable, HDR looks amazing, and it has great gaming features. Although it is an expensive monitor, you're paying a standard price for an OLED, and you get the benefit of QD-OLED too. However, you need to use this monitor in a dark room for it to look the best because of the raised black levels in bright rooms. If that's the case, a regular OLED like the LG C2 displays deep blacks in bright and dark rooms, but colors aren't as vivid on it. Sure, there are text clarity issues, but it isn't much of a problem if you're gaming anyways. However, if you need an ultrawide monitor for your desktop, you probably won't look at this, and there are cheaper options available like the Gigabyte M34WQ. It's an LED monitor with office features like a USB-C input, and although it has great gaming performance too, you lose out on the QD-OLED picture quality of the Dell.